Russia is using Israel to sell sanctioned products in the USA.
It became clear that it could reach like anyone. So there are a lot of cases where people who were more than 50 years old were mobilized to the army. Some people who have the chronic illness were mobilized as well. Of course, a lot of people without any experience of military service were already mobilized.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. A girls' school in Iran scheduled a member of the Revolutionary Guard-run Basij paramilitary organization to speak to students. The girls welcomed the speaker by taking off their headscarves and chanting, "Get lost, Basiji." This awesome graphic is a comment about Iran. It illustrates an interesting article from the site Left East by Sohail Asefi. We link to it in the headlines section of thestruggle.org. 6 months ago, we used this graphic. We were talking about the usual baloney claim that we hear from politicians that Israel is an amazing, dear ally of the United States. And we exposed Israel's lack of support for a project very dear to the U.S. empire at the moment, supporting the government of Ukraine. Nothing has changed in the last 6 months. Israel has not sanctioned Putin or his cronies or any kind of trade with Russia. What the Israeli paper Haaretz has uncovered is that Russia is using Israel to sell sanctioned products in the USA. Americans can't buy diamonds from Russia right now, but if the uncut diamonds are bought and sent to Israel to be polished, then it's all okay. We're talking about big money here. The Russian corporation Al-Rusuk sends out $4 billion worth of diamonds, uncut diamonds, a year. The link to the Haaretz article about this is in the headlines section of thestruggle.org. Of course, the cause of Ukraine is dear to the U.S. empire, mainly because of its rivalry with the governments of Russia and China. The cause of the Ukrainian people is dear to the left because we don't want to see another country smashed up and occupied by fascist goons. On the way to the Cooper Hewitt Museum of Design in Manhattan on 91st Street, I noticed a building with all kinds of red on it. For a few seconds, I thought it was some ultra-modern design artwork. And then I realized it was the Russian consulate. I had read that in the dead of night, someone had thrown red paint all over the building's exterior. It took place on the very day that Putin announced his annexation of 4 parts of Ukraine. So you can guess as to the motive of the vandals. At Cooper Hewitt, there was an exhibition well worth seeing. It was called Design Peace. It's all about how people have used clever or well-designed works to promote peace. One was this model of a pavilion where there would be an exercise of direct democracy. It was built in the semi-liberated Kurdish area of Syria, which the political forces there call Rojava. This is a detail of a rug, but not a normal one. The main body of the rug is made of spent bullet casings. This is a seesaw that was put in places along Trump's border wall with Mexico and delighted the children who actually used it. The exhibit design piece is very good and will be at the Cooper Hewitt for almost another year. 10 blocks away from the Cooper Hewitt is the Ukrainian Institute. It was just finishing up an exhibit, Russian War Crimes. There were amazing photographs in the Institute and also a video that it made. It was comprised of over 4,000 images. It also had a video track of horrible comments made by Russian soldiers on telephone calls that had been intercepted by Ukrainians. The exhibit unfortunately closed October 2nd. We'll try to find out where it will be shown next. Putin's armies have suffered significant losses in Ukraine, but they still control 4 big areas. Putin has officially annexed them to Russia. He made a big speech with a lot of malarkey about Russian historic rights and the Satanism of the West. Clay Claiborne of the Linux Beach site did a good critique of Putin's speech. You can read the article at ukraineposts.webador.com. Folks made amusing memes about annexation. Several claimed that the people of Kaliningrad, Russia, had voted in a referendum to join the Czech Republic, reuniting with Czech, since Kaliningrad originally had been named after a 13th century Bohemian king and thus had deep historic ties to Czech. And this one about future referendums in Alaska and Coney Island. Now part of a talk given by Ilya Budraitskis for the Ukrainian Socialist Solidarity Campaign. Budraitskis is a historian and political writer.
After 21st of September, this war against Ukraine come to the new stage of the escalation, because that day President Putin declared a so-called partial mobilization, and it definitely changed the situation a lot, because if from the beginning of this war Russian army was limited by the professional militaries and so-called volunteers of any kind, for now it seems that it turned to the full-scale war from the Russian side as well, because in Ukraine, of course, you already had this mobilization of the military mobilization of the population happen some months ago. So when Putin declared this mobilization, it clearly came as the answer, as a reaction to the successes of Ukrainian army in the north east of the country, in the Kharkiv area, where the Ukrainian army kicked out the Russians from the huge territory, nearly 3,000 kilometers of Ukrainian territory were liberated in a few days. And it creates a very serious potential danger for the Russian troops so-called Lugansk, Donetsk, Lugansk People's Republic. So that is the occupied territory in the east of Ukraine. When it happened, it became clear that the only way to prevent the defeat of the Russian army from the side of Kremlin, from the side of Putin, was to call for the mobilization. But in fact, it's not clear if this mobilization will be really helpful for Russia to confront the Ukrainian offensive in the south and the north of the country. According to Putin's statement, some 300,000 soldiers should be mobilized to the front. And it seems that it will take nearly 1 or 2 months to train them enough to become a really effective force in the front. However, the very term partial mobilization, which was used by Putin, is very problematic. Firstly, it means that only the people who had the previous military experience could be mobilized in the army. But if you look more clearly on this kind of legal document, which was produced by the Russian government on mobilization, you can see that there is no any certain criteria of who exactly could be mobilized to this war and who is not. Even there is some rumors about the real numbers of this possible mobilization, which could be much higher than this 300,000. When let's say this mobilization started in practice, it became clear that it could reach like anyone. So there are a lot of cases where people who were more than 50 years old were mobilized to the army. Some people who have the chronic illness were mobilized as well. Of course, a lot of people without any experience of military service were already mobilized. In some areas of the country, it looks like a total mobilization, where all the men who are able to take arms should be mobilized. And as I said already, is not clear how effective, how useful this mobilization could be. The way how it was implemented immediately provoke quite a panic reaction in the Russian society. You can't say that there was any sort of rise of some patriotic feelings about this mobilization, or that there are a lot of people who were happy to go to the army to serve on their duty as the Russian citizens and so on. But in opposite, you just from the very beginning of this mobilization, you had a lot of people who were trying to protest publicly in different ways against this mobilization. You had a lot of people who are trying to escape from this mobilization by leaving the country or just hiding in inside the country. And also you can say that this measure became really unpopular. It became unpopular, firstly, because the aims of this war is still unclear for the most of the Russians. It seems that the aims of this war from the Russian perspective is not clear for anyone. Because if you remember from the beginning of the story, that the explanation was that Russia is trying to undermine the so-called fascist regime in Ukraine. So it was a kind of regime change, war regime change, military operation. Then the decision, then the explanation changed and moved to the idea that we want to just liberate some parts of Ukraine from so-called fascists and bring back the territories of so-called historical Russia, so of the Russian Empire. And now you have the third explanation, that we are fighting not just against Ukraine, but we are in military conflict with NATO. We are in military conflict with the so-called collective West, as Putin pointed. And we are fighting not just for the domination over Ukraine, but we are fighting for some kind of the new world order, where the Russian government, led by Putin, will dictate their own rules, their own will. And if you follow the recent speech of Putin 2 days ago, when this document of annexation of Ukrainian territories by Russia was signed. So in the speech, there was actually very little about these regions of Ukraine. So mostly it was the kind of global narrative about the conflict and between the Russia and the West, the clash of civilizations, a clash of values. There were much more about so-called transgender totalitarianism and its danger in this speech than any explanation what will be the future for these Ukrainian territories who were annexed by Russia this day. So you can say that most of Russians, they're a bit of lost in this ocean of various types of propagandistic narratives, and the final goals of this war seems for them extremely unclear. The second reason, even much more important, why this mobilization is extremely unsuccessful for the moment, is that if you look back to the 22 years of Vladimir Putin's rule in Russia, you can find that during all this time, it was based on some kind of contract in between the government and the people. So the contract was very simple. The government control all the political life, all the public sphere, but the other part of the contract was that people can live their private lives. So it was like a radical implementation of very neoliberal governing of the society, where society is absolutely fragmented, absolutely depoliticized, and everyone is thinking only about his own life, because all the forms of public life are criminalized, dangerous, and suspicious, let's say. So by the start of the mobilization, Putin himself broke this unspoken contract with his own citizens, because from that moment, let's say, politics or war intervene in the sphere of the private life of nearly every Russian. And that is very potentially very dangerous step. For the moment, you can say that you have some kind of resistance against this, but this resistance still come from the minority of the Russian society. I can say that in the protests against the recent mobilization, you can define two sorts, two kinds of resistance. So the first one is the mostly student youth type of protest in the major Russian cities, where in the first day of the mobilization, some hundreds of young people they came to the center of Moscow, they came to the center of St. Petersburg, some other big Russian cities, and they were immediately arrested in a very brutal way. So these protests were suppressed nearly in the same way how it happened in the beginning of this war, when in the late February and early March we also had this protests of young people in the big cities, especially in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, and some other major Russian cities. And I can say that this type of protest for now has not so much potential, because simply because if you are just hundreds or just even several thousands, it's not possible to confront the same, let's say, thousands of armed police who can do with you whatever they want. And for you should understand that there are no rules for the police at all. They're acting even much worse as it was in Russia, like year ago or 2 years ago. So I can give you one example. In Moscow, this I think it was 24th of September. There was this small protest of the young people in the very center of the city. So one of this of the activists, young guy, he after this protest, he was kidnapped from his apartment. So police intervened in his apartment, and then they took him to the police office and raped him with a stick. And then he spent some couple of days in police office and was released. So you can do nothing against this kind of cases. So you should hide, you should leave the country, and that's the only way to escape from this kind of police violence. Also, you have to know that all the Russian cities, especially Moscow, St. Petersburg, they are very much secured. So they have the cameras all around. And even if you are not arrested immediately in the street, you could be arrested next day or during the night in your own apartment, simply because they immediately can recognize everyone with this system of surveillance in the cities like Moscow. But also from the beginning of mobilization, you had some other type of protests, which were much more massive, much more, let's say, energetic, and much more spontaneous. These were the protests of the people, of the women and men who are protesting against their brothers or their husbands or their fathers will be mobilized to the war.
You may recall that several weeks ago we had video where Russian TV producer Marina Ovsyannikova, at her trial for opposing Putin's war, put a sign on the glass separating her from the court opposing Putin's war. She was put under house arrest. Well, a video has come out with her saying that she has escaped from house arrest.
Esteemed colleagues of the Federal Penitentiary Service, put an electric tag like this on Putin, it is he, not I, who should be kept away from society and put on trial over the genocide of the people of Ukraine and the mass killing of Russian men.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.